And now what shall I do? Make a mockery of myself, go back to my old suitors, tempt them to try again. Beg the Numidians, grovel, plead for a husband. Though time and again I scorn to wed their like. What then? Trail the Trojan ships, bend to the Trojans every last demand. So pleased are they, with all the help, the relief I lent them once. In memory of my service, past stands firm in grateful minds. And even if I were willing, would the Trojans allow me to board their proud ships, a woman they hate? Poor lost fool, can't you sense it, grasp it yet? The treachery of Laomedon's breed. What now? Do I take flight alone, consorting with crews of Trojan oarsmen in their triumph? Or follow them out with all my troops of tyrants throwing the decks? Yes, hard as it was to uproot them once from Tyre. How can I force them back to sea once more, command them to spread their sails to the winds? No, die. You deserve it. End your pain with the sword. You, my sister, you were the first, won over by my tears, to pile these sorrows on my shoulders, mad as I was, to throw me into my enemy's arms. If only I'd been free to live my life, untested in marriage, free of guilt, as some wild beast untouched by pangs like these. I broke the faith I swore to the ashes of Zacchaeus.
Okay, so again, the idea here is, for Homer, love is what gives you strength. Love is what allows you to resurrect yourself, okay? So the metaphor is, love is the bow of Odysseus, right? Where this bow, Odysseus has not touched for 20 years. But the moment he touches it, it gives him renewed strength, and he's able to assemble it very quickly and then shoot the target, okay? That's the power of love. But here in the Ennead, love is simply opposite, where by following love, you disintegrate as a person. So remember, when we first meet Dido, she's a proud queen. And now she is a complete mess. She is emotionally falling apart. She's being driven into madness. She's like, should I go and beg the Trojans to let me on their ship and be a slave girl? Okay? So it is the complete fall of a queen. Okay? From a queen to essentially to a slave girl. She's seriously considering being a slave girl if it just means being near Aeneas. And ultimately she decides, no, my only option is to die, okay? All right. So she is contemplating killing herself. And the gods know this, and so what they do is they tell Aeneas in a dream, get out of here, because we don't want you seeing Dido kill herself, okay? Can you read? I read.
Such terrible grief kept breaking from her heart as Aeneas slept in peace on his ship's high stern.
Okay, so Aeneas slept in peace, meaning he doesn't care. Do you understand? He was never in love with her. She was just a plaything. Keep on going.
Bent on departing now, all tackle set to sail. And now in his dreams it came again, the god, his phantom, the same features shining clear. Like Mercury head to foot, the voice, the glow, the golden hair, the bloom of youth on his limbs, and his voice rang out with warnings once again. Son of the goddess, how can you sleep so soundly in such a crisis? Can't you see the dangers closing around you now? Madman, can't you hear the west wind ruffling to speed you on? That woman spawns her plots, mulling over some desperate outrage in her heart, lashing her surging rage. She's bent on death. Why not flee headlong? Flee headlong while you can. You'll soon see the waves a chaos of ships, lethal torches flaring, the whole coast ablaze, if now a new dawn breaks and finds you still malingering on these shores. Up with you now. Enough delay. Woman to think that's always changing, shifting like the wind. With that he vanished into the black night.
Okay. Alright, so Aeneas is running away, okay? And Dido has resolved to kill herself. And this is her speech right before she kills herself. Okay, can you read, Irene?
You, sun, whose fires scan all works of the earth, and you, Juno, the witness, midwife to my agonies. He greeted by nightly shrieks at city crossroads. And you avenging furies and gods of dying ditto. Hear me, turn your power my way, attend my sorrows. I deserve your mercy, hear my prayers. If that curse of the earth must reach his haven, labor on to landfall. If Joe's and the fates command and the boundary stone is fixed, still, let him be plagued in war by a nation proud in arms, torn from his borders, wrenched from Ilias's embrace. Let him grovel for help and watch his people die a shameful death. And then, once he has bowed down to an unjust peace, may he never enjoy his realm and the light he yearns for. Never. Let him die before his day, unburied on some desolate beach. That is my prayer, my final cry. I pour it out with my own lifeblood. And you, my Tyrians, harry with hatred all his line, his race to come. Make that offering to my ashes, send it down below. No love between our peoples, ever, no pacts of peace. Come rising up from my bones, you avengers still unknown, to stalk those Trojan settlers, hunt with fire and iron, now or in time to come, whenever the power is yours. Shore clash with shore, sea against sea, and sword against sword. This is my curse. War between all our peoples, all their children, endless war.
Okay, endless war. Okay. All right. So the Iliad is first and foremost political propaganda. All right. And so, Rome's epic war is with Carthage. Rome and Carthage fought for about 100 years for control of the Mediterranean. Ultimately, Rome will triumph over Carthage, and they will destroy Carthage as a civilization. They will burn Carthage down. And today we have no memory of Carthage because so complete was the destruction. And Virgil is trying to explain to us why this had to happen. And it had to happen because Dido put a curse on Rome and forced her people to go to war with Rome. So it's not that Rome was vicious and savage in destroying Carthage. It was like the Carthaginians had a curse. They had a mission to avenge Dido. Okay? So let me explain to you how this propaganda works. In Carthage understanding of Dido, she's the founder. She's the queen of Carthage. What happened was that, her husband was killed in Phoenicia, so she and some refugees sought refuge in northern Africa. So they found the city of Carthage. And they worked really hard to build the city, and she was very attractive, so she won the attention of some local warlords, and they demanded her hand in marriage. And her response was to kill herself. And by killing herself, that her sacrifice emboldened her people to build a great city, but also it won the respect of the local warlords as well. And from then on, everyone understood the Carthaginians as a free and proud people who would rather die for their liberty than become a slave. Okay? So that's the Carthaginian understanding of Dido. Here in the Iliad, it is almost the reverse, where Dido's love for Aeneas becomes a poison. It poisons her soul, and it leads her to poison her people as well. And rather than give them freedom, she enslaves them into a mission to avenge her. Okay? So it's basically inversion. Right? So that's what the Iliad is doing. It's inverting Homer, but it's also inverting history to serve the political purposes of Rome. All right, so we come to the ending of the Iliad. So with the story of Dido, what Virgil is doing is inverting the story of the Odyssey. Now we come to the ending of the Iliad, and here Virgil is going to invert the story of the Iliad. Okay, remember, recall what happened in the Iliad, where Achilles tricks Patroclus into sacrificing himself, and this allows Achilles an excuse to enter the battlefield against Hector. He kills Hector, and he believes that this is the height, the apex of his glory. but instead it causes him to fall into a deep depression. And it's really Priam's willingness to forgive him because of his love for Hector that frees Achilles from his guilt. And the two, Achilles and Priam, cry together and they become friends because of this. Okay? So the Iliad is fundamentally a story of the curse of power, the evil of power, and the ability of love to both redeem and to save. What Virgil's going to do is take the story of the Iliad and invert it, okay? So it ends actually with an analogy to the battle between Achilles and Hector, okay? So in the Iliad, it's between Achilles and Hector. But here, it's going to be between Aeneas and Turnus, okay? So what happened is that Aeneas lands in Italy, and the Latin tribes see Aeneas as this great hero. And the king there, Latinus, marries his daughter to Aeneas. But the wife, for whatever reason, like the woman in the Iliad, all the villains, okay? The wife, the queen, has already promised her daughter to Turnus, who is another warlord. And so this starts off a war between the Trojans and Turnus, okay? And ultimately, this leads to a final conflict, a great battle between Aeneas and Turnus, okay? So this is the very ending of the Iliad. Okay, can you read, Ivory?
As he hangs back, the fatal spear of Aeneas streaks on, spotting a lucky opening he had flung from a distance, all his might and main. Rocks heaved by a catapult, pounding city ramparts, never stormed so loudly, never such a shattering bolt of thunder crashing forth. Like a black whirlwind churning on, that spear flies on with its weight of iron death to pierce the breastplate's lower edge and the outmost rim of the round shield, with its 7 plies, and right at the thick of Turnus' thigh it whizzes through. It strikes home, and the blow drops great Turnus down to the ground, battered down on his bent knees. The Rutulians spring up with a groan, and the hillsides round groan back, and the tall groves far and wide resound with the long-drawn moan. Turnus lowered his eyes and reached with his right hand and begged, a suppliant, "I deserve it all. No mercy, please," Turnus pleaded. "Seize your moment now. Or if some care for a parent's grief can touch you still, I pray you. You had such a father in old Anchises. Pity Adonis in his old age and send me back to my own people. Or if you would prefer, send them my dead body stripped of life. Here, the victor and vanquished, I stretch my hands to you, so the men in Latium have seen me in defeat. Lavinia is your bride. Go no further down the road of hatred."
Okay, all right, okay. So again, this is a rewriting of the battle between Hector and Achilles. But in this battle, it is Hector who wins, and Achilles is basically begging for mercy. And what's really interesting is that to beg for mercy, Turnus basically uses the words of Priam from the Iliad, right? Remember what Priam says to Achilles is, "I kissed your hand. Have mercy for me. Look at my face. Remember of your father, Achilles. Remember your father, Peleus," okay? Same exact words, right? Care for a parent's grief, okay? And I stretch my hands to you. Right? So basically, Virgil's plagiarizing Homer. But he's plagiarizing in a way as to invert and subvert Homer. Okay? So at this point, Aeneas is drawn to pity, right? Because his great enemy, Turnus, has submitted himself before him. So in his heart, he's like, you know what? I've defeated him. He's been destroyed. He's lost face. He's lost credibility. I can let him go. I've won. Okay? And that's what he wants to do. He just wants to let him go. But this is the very ending, okay? This is the very ending of the Iliad. And the ending is surprising because for many scholars, they read this, they're like, this is not an ending, this is too abrupt. And they think like Virgil was not able to finish the Iliad. But what I'll show you is that no, you're reading the Iliad improperly, incorrectly, if you do not believe this is the full ending. Okay, this is in fact the ending. Okay, can you read it, Ivory?
Okay. Aeneas, ferocious in armor, stood there, still, shifting his gaze, and held his sword arm back, holding himself back to, as Turnus' words began to sway him more and more, when all at once he caught sight of the fateful sword belt of Pallas swept over Turnus' shoulder, gleaming with shining studs Aeneas knew by heart.
Wait, sorry, Pallas is the version of Patroclus. Remember how Patroclus died and that enraged Achilles? Well, Pallas is a friend of Aeneas who fell in battle to Turnus. And Turnus, to celebrate his victory over Pallas, stole the sword belt of Pallas, okay? So, and Aeneas recognizes this. Keep on going.
Young Pallas, whom Turnus had overpowered, taken down with a wound, and now his shoulder flaunted his enemy's battle emblem like a trophy. Aeneas soon his eyes drank in that plunder, keepsake of his own savage grief. Flaring up in fury, terrible in his rage, he cries, "Decked in the spoils who stripped from one I loved, escape my clutches. Never. Pallas strikes this blow. Pallas sacrifices you now, makes you pay the price with your own guilty blood." In the same breath, blazing with wrath, he plants his iron sword hilt deep into his enemy's heart. Turnus' limbs went limp in the chill of death. His light breath fled with a groan of outrage down to the shades below.
And that's it. This is the ending of the Iliad. And again, scholars are confused by this. Like, how could the epic end like this? It's a very long epic, 24 books, and it ends with the death of Turnus and nothing more. And it's confusing because scholars and literary critics are taught to believe that a good book has an epiphany and a catharsis, okay? Epiphany, catharsis, and a resolution. Basically, a character recognizes himself and changes for the better. Okay? It's almost like a death. And letting go of the past. And so scholars read this and they're completely confused. Where is the epiphany? Where's the catharsis? Where's the resolution? And the answer is because you're misreading the Iliad. First and foremost, it is a work of political propaganda. So how has Aeneas changed as a person? Well, the change is this. Previously, whenever Aeneas has a doubt, okay? Like for example, he is changing his emotions. Each time this happened previously, the gods had to intervene, right? So remember how Aeneas is back in Troy and he's witnessed the killing of his king Priam. And he's really angry. And then he sees Helen. And he wants to kill Helen because he understands that Helen is the cause of all the death and destruction in Troy. And he wants to just kill her. And then what happens? His mother Venus intervenes and says, "No, Aeneas, you must stop. There's a mission for you. Go complete your mission." And then Aeneas is like, "Fine, mother, I'll go home." And then when he goes home and he sees her, his son Ilias, he wants to return and fight the Greeks because he wants to protect his city. And then Ilias, there's a sign from the gods. Ilias, his hair is on fire. Okay, it's an image, and this tells Aeneas, "No, your son is destined for great things. You must fulfill the mission." Again, when Aeneas is with Dido, he just wants to stay with Dido and build up Carthage. And so Jupiter has to send a messenger, Mercury, to tell him, "No, Aeneas, no, go to Italy." Okay? So each time that Aeneas went off mission, or he has his own ideas, the gods have to intervene. What makes this an epiphany, a catharsis, a revolution is the fact that here, when Aeneas wants to show mercy, when in his heart he's like, this is a pitiful man. It gives me no pleasure to kill him. It gives me no glory and honor to kill this pathetic man. He recognizes, no, I must kill him because it is a duty. It is the will of the gods. Now he has become fully pious. And that is the epiphany. Okay? I must abandon all pity. I must abandon all emotions. I must abandon my own soul if I am to serve the gods. He is now the perfect soldier. And that's why Virgil wrote the Aeneid, because it is a piece of propaganda. It's a piece of brainwashing, indoctrination, where you read it and you go on the same journey as Aeneas. And step by step, you let go of everything that makes you weak. Your humanity, your willingness, your desire to love someone, throw it out. Your pity, your sense of decency, get rid of it. Okay? And once you do, once you have cleansed yourself of all human emotions, then you can serve the gods completely. You are now fully pious. And as such, you can now complete your mission. All right? So that's the power of the Aeneid. You may know what's happening, but as you memorize it, because back then, the way to educate yourself was just to memorize the poetry. You became Aeneas himself. Okay? You transform yourself from someone who was a human to someone who is now basically a robot. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, any questions? Yeah? Can you, yeah?
Yeah, I think it's true that like Aeneas, he didn't feel empathy towards Turnus because he killed him later. But I mean, I think that is still because like he loved Pallas, his friend, who was killed by Turnus. So that's also kind of feeling, right? That's an emotion and that contributes to Turnus' death. So isn't that different from what you said about maybe Aeneas being a robot and fulfilling his fate?
Okay, yeah. All right, that's a good point, okay? So, your point is, well, Aeneas loves his friend, Pallas. And as a result, it's this love for Pallas that drives Aeneas to kill Turnus, right? That's fine, that makes sense, but go back to the Iliad, right? Where Achilles is saddened and angered by the death of Patroclus. And he kills Hector, right? But then what happens? He falls into a deep depression. Because in his heart, he recognizes that you don't avenge someone you love by killing someone. That's not how the universe works. If you truly love someone, you do not turn the memory of that person into hatred and violence. You celebrate the person's life by being open and generous with others. Okay, and this is something that Dante will explain. This is a very hard idea to understand, okay? But if you truly love someone, love means that you cannot do something evil. Love is pure good. If you do something evil, it means you actually don't love that person. Okay? Does that make sense to you? If you truly love Pallas as a person, you would not use him as an excuse to kill someone. Alright? Same thing with the Iliad, where Achilles thought he loved Patroclus, but he was actually using Patroclus as an excuse to kill Hector. And in his heart, he knows that. Right? This is really confusing to understand, but when we read the Divine Comedy, it will make sense to you. All right? Okay? All right. Any more questions, guys? Okay. Yeah, so that's a great question, and it shows you how basically in this world, this is a world of anti-love. Because you receive an education in utility, right? Obedience, compliance. But what you have not received is an education in love. What is love? How do we know we're in love? What draws us to love? Okay, and that's what the great books are about. The great books, if you read Homer and Dante, they really think deeply about what love is. Because in love is where God is. All right? Okay? So again, by asking this question, what you're really doing is revealing the sort of education you've received, when in your mind you think that what is right is one of utility and one of compliance. If Pallas, my best friend, died, then I need to seek vengeance against the person who killed him. Okay? But I know it's hard to understand, but you've been brainwashed to think that. That's not actually true. If your best friend were to be killed someone else, to demonstrate love to your best friend, you would actually forgive that person. Okay? And I know this is a hard idea to understand, but when we read the Divine Comedy, it'll become more obvious, okay? Okay, any more questions, guys? All right, so let me explain the plan for the Divine Comedy, which we will end the semester with, okay? So there'll be 4 lectures on the Divine Comedy. So I'll be doing a lecture every 2 weeks, all right? And then for the other classes, we'll just be reading the Divine Comedy line by line by line, all right? Okay, all right, so we start the Divine Comedy on Friday, all right? Very good. Okay. Do you understand? Okay. It's a very hard idea to understand, okay? But it's hard idea to understand just because, I hate to say this, but you've been brainwashed and